Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing, where we share real recovery stories, learn from experts, and share resources that actually work. So join us in being unashamed and unafraid.
Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid. If you are interested in advancing the cause of Unashamed Unafraid, you can become an outsider and help us out with monthly donations. Go to unashamedunafraid.com. You can follow us at Unashamed Unafraid on social media. Give us a 5-star rating. And if you have a story or a resource, shoot that our way. We would love to hear about it. I'm here with Chris.
What up, y'all?
And
Making it happen.
And we are here with Hunter and Sarah. Hunter and Sarah, how are you guys doing?
We are here.
We're doing good. We're excited to be here.
We are here.
We're glad you guys are here to share your hearts.
It's horror and here's a who.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, here's a who. Yep.
So, guys, paint yourself into context for us and help us understand. How did you guys get here?
Yeah. So I had heard about you guys, and I think I really respected what you guys were doing, and I've got a story of my own that I think can add value to people's lives, and that's why we're sitting here. And I also think my wife has a pretty unique perspective on all this stuff that she could add a ton of value as well. And I mean, we're excited.
Heck yeah. Well, so let's talk about your story. Like, tell us, like, when did some things start happening for you? Like, growing up, what was life like for you?
Oh yeah. I'll kind of share my perspective, and then I'll let Sarah share hers. But I have a pretty typical story, as you guys have probably heard, and others. I got introduced when I was like 10 years old on the first iPod Touch.
The
iPod Touch.
The old iPod Touch, and that was a really interesting time because my parents didn't know how to handle it. The church didn't even know what was going on. It was definitely a big wave, and I got hooked on it, and for a long time I thought I was the only one. And when I kind of got into high school, it became a little bit more normalized, and the whole talk was, oh yeah, you just overcome it before your mission, right? And I was like, oh yeah, cool, like I'll just do my thing now, and 6 months before my mission I'll stop. And that time came, and I was like, tried to stop, and I was like, holy crap, this is I think I dug myself into a deeper hole than I realized. And
just a little bit harder to stop.
Yeah, it was, everyone was like, yeah, you just stop. And I'm like, oh, how do you do that?
And if it were just so easy.
You just decide to, right? You just one day you decide it matters and you stop.
Yeah, there you go. And a couple months before my mission, I was able to white knuckle a few months clean, and was able to go. And I went on my mission in Mexico, had a little walnut flip phone, and about an hour of internet time a week to email the family. So I didn't really struggle with it at all on my mission. And during my mission, I'm like, oh sweet, I just needed to serve a mission, right? Like then I healed myself, right? And then I came home, and have you guys heard the story of Pavlov's dogs?
Yeah.
Where they ring a bell and the dogs salivate because of the food. It was like, once I got a smartphone back in my pocket, 24/7 access, it was like,
that was the bell.
The draw.
The bell was ringing, and I was starting to salivate, and I unfortunately fell back into it. And this was a pretty interesting time where I was like, okay, like, people talk about it and joke about it in high school, but like no one really talks about it after the mission.
Right. You're not going deep and being like, hey, I feel like this is destroying me. I feel like I am losing control. You're not talking about that.
Well, return missionaries don't struggle with pornography, right? That's the story I had always
right.
None of them, not a single one.
Says no one ever.
I know.
Yeah, and I got to this point where I was dating, but I was like, hey, I'm not going to get married until I overcome this. And I dated a few girls and broke up with them because I was still struggling. And then I met my wife, Sarah, and, I felt very strongly that we needed to get married. And
How did you guys meet?
we just met through mutual friends.
Sweet.
Just, yeah. And, about a couple weeks into dating, I told her about, where I was at with everything, which I think was a really big moment in our relationship. And obviously she wasn't, I'll kind of let you tell your story, but obviously no girl's going to be super stoked to hear that. Right.
Right.
But, she got the confirmation to, move forward with the relationship, and we got married. But I'll kind of let you share when you first heard that.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
I mean, I think that when obviously, like Hunter said, no girl wants to hear that their boyfriend or this person that they love struggled with pornography. And it was really hard just because all growing up, I just remember girls in high school would always be like, never marry a guy who struggles with pornography. Like if they struggle with pornography, you run.
But turns out
However,
nobody's going to get married.
yeah, that literally now what I say, I'm like, well, either. I mean, I will give it. They're not all men struggle with pornography,
Right,
so I don't
right.
want to be generalized here. But for most people, I'm like, if you, I'm like, careful there because either one, he's not going to tell you, or two, anyways.
Yep.
I have my own thoughts about that. But anyways, when Hunter came and told me, um, just to preface, I actually looked at pornography like 2 times when I was like 13 years old. I was never addicted to it, but I remember looking at it and my mom came to me and was like, "Hey, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that was bad." And I went to the bishop about it. And I remember me feeling a lot of shame about it, even though I never was addicted to it.
Right.
And so when Hunter came and told me, uh, it's almost like I felt some of those feelings I had previous felt in the past of just like, oh, I know how you feel. Like, I can't believe that you struggled with that for that many years because I only looked at it like once or twice and I felt sick about it. So for you to struggle with it for 10 years plus must feel really hard.
Yeah.
And on the other side, obviously the stories in my head of like, well, should I move forward with this relationship? Because I've heard that you shouldn't date guys who struggle with pornography or you should run or blah 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 blah. But I think that Hunter's honesty with me so soon into the relationship and the fact that he was working on it too, like he wasn't just like, hey, I'm struggling with pornography and I'm not really doing anything. He's like, hey, I'm struggling with pornography and I really have this strong desire to overcome it, and I'm working with somebody and I'm like getting help. It helped me build a lot of trust in him and realize that like, okay, I don't feel this need to break up with you right now, and we'll just kind of see how things go. And so yeah, it was hard, and I don't want to say like, oh, it was just easy. And I felt so much compassion. Like I think it was not an either or, as both and. Like I felt a lot of compassion towards him, and obviously I was scared and I was worried because it felt like a little bit of a risk to continue our relationship, not knowing
Right.
what future could look like. But yeah, like you said, I did feel like he was still my person, and there were so many things that I loved about him aside from his pornography habit. And so that's why I wanted to continue, is because like I still loved Hunter as a person and everything else that he is.
Love that.
His pornography issue is not like
Him.
I don't
It's not
see him
him.
as it's not him. It's not, that does not define him.
Sarah, how did you develop that perspective? Did that just come instinctively?
I would say it came more. No one really told me that, but I feel like
You just knew
I
what
want
you
to say
felt.
yeah, I would say that's what I felt.
Very cool.
Awesome. Now, Hunter, for you, so after you had already told her, what was it like for you when? How long before you started acting out again after that? Were you still acting out during that time when you told her about it? How often were you talking to her about it? All that.
Yeah. So part of that conversation that we had, I said, hey, I can't promise perfection because I don't know how this is going to go. But what I can promise is open and honesty about
Oh, sweet.
anything. Like, if you want to talk about it, like, I'm an open book. And, we kind of developed this. I would tell her every time that I would mess up. And I think that definitely like created some space in between the relapses, but I was still still relapsing. And, at this time I was working with a coach, and, I was getting better, I was improving, but, our temple date is coming up pretty fast. And I'm like really working hard, but still kind of struggling. And,
Temple date
we
for
ended,
marriage, right?
Yeah.
yes. And so we ended up getting married, and I think I had like one relapse right before we got married, and it felt awful. But I talked to the bishop, talked to her, cleaned things up. We were good. We got married, and then the first 6 to 8 months of marriage man, it was awesome. Like I was like, oh man, you just need to get married, then you don't struggle with it anymore,
Right?
right?
Says every person that struggles with sexual addiction recovery. I mean, everybody that I've talked to says the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and
Sam,
Yeah, I
you know
know.
that
I'm
that's
not
not
married
true.
yet, and like, I'll be honest, it crosses my mind sometimes, and then I hear guys like you, and it's actually helpful. So it didn't work. It didn't heal the
Well,
problem.
Well, it worked for 8 months.
But
Sure.
I want to tag in a little bit. It's because
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that when people say that it worked, they think, oh, because you're having sex now, that's what's making it work. But I think what happened is Hunter got super busy. Like we got married and then we immediately went out to summer cells, and he was running a team. He had so many guys underneath him, and now he had to be a husband. And so it's like you were so busy
Yeah.
that I think that's what made it so you didn't relapse. I don't want to discredit like sex and everything,
I think
but
the
I think
honeymoon
that
phase, being busy, like definitely all
totally,
contributed to it.
yeah.
Yep.
So we're about 8 months into marriage, and I have my first relapse being married, and I kept that open communication with my wife, and we learned, we moved on, and we kept going, and it almost just seemed like a steady decline from there. Like it just started to happen more and more and more frequently for probably the next year and a half. And it got to a point where I'm super stressed at work, trying to do summer sales and provide. And I was in the solar game, and the solar coaster was real, and ups and downs. And it got to a point where I was probably relapsing once a week. And I'm still communicating with Sarah every time, and it almost got to this point where it's just like, is this even gonna like go away? We were pretty low at that point, and I just like couldn't stop.
So were you working? I know you said you were talking to your coach, but at that time, were you actually like really working on trying to find recovery and really working on stopping?
Yeah, so I've hired a few coaches, and this moment I wasn't doing anything particular. So I was in the 12 steps program before we left to sales. And then when we went out to California to sell, there were no 12-step programs near me. There was one online, and I show up and I'm the only guy there, the facilitators. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this.
You were the only guy? It was all women?
No, I was the only person.
Oh, you were like the only person there. Got it.
There was one person that
Okay,
showed up.
I was like, that's kind of weird that they were just opening it up to, hey, anybody.
Yeah.
I have been to one of those, and it is not comfortable. And I'm like, yeah, not for me.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we learned too. But, at this point, it's interesting because we're making the most money that we ever had as a couple. And I remember one time specifically thinking, I would trade every single penny for this addiction to be gone. Like hundreds of thousands of dollars, take it. Like,
Right.
I don't want it. I want this out of my life. And that's kind of like when we took a step back and we're like really kind of looking and kind of figuring things out. So that was a pretty big moment.
So what did that look like for you? You took a step
recovery.
back. So you're like, took a step back from?
I took a step back from what I was trying. I really looked at, okay, what I'm doing is not working. I need to shift is kind of what I said. And, what I was trying was phone filters. I was trying 12 steps. I was trying more willpower, trying to be more spiritual, stronger, more disciplined. And it's like, it was almost like a spiritual moment of like, this is not working. You need to change what you're trying. And that was like a really big shift for us.
Right. So how long ago was that?
This was a year and a half ago, probably. Around there.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
Awesome.
And so then we embarked on this new journey of, approaching things very differently. And the first thing that I started to do that I feel like really started to help me was actually open up about it. I'm open with my spouse,
Heck yeah.
my bishop knows, few friends know, but at this point I had read something online that said, opening up can help. And so I started to open up and I started to talk to my sales teams. I started to talk to friends, big groups of friends, like really starting to open up. And for the first time, I started to notice like, hey, this doesn't feel like it has as much power on me. Like it
Right.
really started to feel like, hey, this is like losing its grips is kind of how I can explain it. I'm not perfect at this point, but like it's feeling a lot easier. And so I started to do more research on why it was helping. And that's where I figured out the shame, fuels addiction. And that's why I
Yeah.
love your guys' name, Unashamed, so much is because I truly believe like that is the first step to recovery is, getting rid of shame. And an easy way to get rid of shame is by talking to people and just opening
Right.
up.
Because
So-
shame just absolutely lives in isolation and wants to keep you in
100%.
isolation.
Yeah, Hunter, when you were like at that crossroads where you knew something had to change and you realized, hey, maybe if I can just get rid of the shame, what were some of the things at that point that maybe stopped you or were scary for you or maybe just kind of like had you teetering? Was there anything like that
To
for
talk
you?
to people,
What's that?
to open up to people
Yeah.
or
Yep.
okay. What was really scary for me was, I'm married, right? Like married men don't struggle with this, right? That's the story that you hear.
Right.
And, uh, um, I never heard any of my friends that got married and opened up about struggling with pornography. And so that was really scary for me. It's like, if I was single, it'd be different, but being married and being happily married and being in a good relationship, but still struggling, that was like really scary to me. But when I started to open up, I found two things is one, a lot more men struggle with this than we think.
Yeah.
They're just too afraid to talk about it. And then two, the people that don't struggle, they still loved me just as much, if not even more, because now I'm being vulnerable and open and honest with them.
Yeah.
So those were two things that I found. And, I kept getting guys coming up to me and them saying that they're in a similar boat. And, a lot of these guys hadn't told their wives. And, I kind of started playing this role of like, hey, like, go freaking tell your wife. Like, it's going to be hard and it's going to suck, but like, you can't live in secrecy like this your whole
Totally.
marriage, right? These guys are waiting to overcome it and then have a conversation, which for me, Sarah has been such a big part of my recovery. It's like you guys are missing such a big part of having your spouse support you. And the reason you don't have that is because you're not talking with them.
Right.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what I love about that is here you are as a mentor to them, right? You've got your sales teams because I coach a lot of guys that do summer sales all the time, and I know that they I mean it's huge in that industry, and so for you as their mentor to being like, hey, you know what? I'm letting you guys know this is what I'm up against, and just all of a sudden these guys just start opening up to you. That's dope.
Yeah,
That's super cool.
totally.
And Hunter, I'm curious what that changed for you. I'm at kind of at a point, probably maybe a year and a half ago, where you were. where I'm
Mhm.
actually finally opening up about my story and doing all the things.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
curious.
maybe you should be on a podcast.
Yeah, maybe I should be on a podcast. I'm just curious, what changed for you after you started doing that? How were you different?
Yeah, like I said, it almost felt like the grips of addiction like loosened. Like it wasn't gone, but it like loosened. Something felt easier. And I got rid of a lot of the shame that I had. And that is what changed for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Sarah, what did you see in him with the changes that he started doing when he was mentoring these men in a different way, making some
Yeah.
changes?
I would say I saw Hunter a lot more relieved. Because I think that it can feel like a lonely world. I don't lie, I was really scared for him to open up about it too.
For
Not
sure.
not necessarily to for his sake, but also for my sake of like, oh, you're married to a guy who struggles with pornography. Like, oh, and you knew about it before you got married. Like, what girl would do that? You're
Why are you
crazy
so
because
stupid?
girls don't marry guys that struggle with pornography. So there was part of me too that was a little nervous. Like, one, I didn't talk to my parents about it before I got married, and so I was like, if it was a big deal, it was like, Hunter, if you open about it on social media, we need to talk to my parents first. Like, I'm not letting my parents figure out about your porn addiction um, through Instagram.
They're like, wait, you're struggling with stuff? Like, what's
Yeah,
going on
yeah.
here?
Like, that would be terrible. And I feel like I was like, there's preparation that needed to happen before he opened up about it. And then also like I kind of needed to prepare myself of like, okay, what are people going to think? But I would see the difference that I've seen in him is just I feel like he's been more relieved in a sense of just knowing that he's not alone. Because I think that, and I'll be honest, I feel like I've been a little bit relieved too, because as he's opened up about it on social media, the amount of wives that have reached out to me and been like, "Hey, I've never had anyone to talk to about this. Like, my husband struggles too." It's been really fun to help them, but also it's been really nice for my sake to be like, "Wow, I'm not alone either." And a lot
Right.
more women are going through this than we realize. But yeah, I would say Hunter, as he opened up about it and got vulnerable about it, and then I mean, I don't want to speak your story too much, but then I feel like he got into a lot of healing modalities around like healing past traumas and maybe triggering situations. And I feel like that's where I've seen the biggest difference in you is like realizing, because what I've learned about pornography is it's a coping mechanism. It's a coping
Right.
mechanism for how you're feeling. But how, I think a lot of the things that Hunter tried at the beginning of his pornography, at the beginning of marriage, was, the phone passcodes, the deleting apps and doing that. And I think that those aren't necessarily bad things. Those are good temporary
Yeah,
things to do.
totally.
But they were just band-aids for a symptom, right?
Totally.
But I feel like what really helped Hunter get to overcoming this was getting to the root cause, which was those traumas or those past experiences that might have been triggering for him, or just certain feelings that he was having, and rooting it back to maybe a belief that just needed to be switched or changed. And I feel like when he's has been able to get to like the root cause of what he was coping with is when I feel like I've seen the biggest change in
For
him.
sure.
So what did healing look like for you, Hunter?
Yeah, a lot of it, came through therapy. Um, therapy in, I think there's lots of ways to go about therapy, but a way that I kind of approached therapy was through a thing called ketamine. Have you guys
Uh-huh.
heard about
Yep.
ketamine?
Ketamine therapy.
Ketamine therapy, and along those lines, that stuff really seemed to almost like put a mirror in front of my face, and I was able to really see, my traumas that I didn't really recognize before. I didn't think were traumas. And so that really kind of started opening me up. And, that's when I really got to work on the deep stuff is through that. Not just through ketamine, but working with someone while doing ketamine therapy
Right.
was really a good, you know, way for me to dive deep into these limiting beliefs and traumas.
Hunter, how did your perspective about recovery start to change as you faced it this way instead of the previous white knuckling and filters? And filters are good, right? But how did that change?
Oh, dude, I love this. It felt so much easier. Like, I tell a lot of people that ask me, I'm like, yeah, like you can quit porn the hard way or you can quit porn the easy way.
Right.
And I'm choosing the easy way right now.
And everybody's like, "What? There's an easy way? I want to know. I want to know what this easy way is."
Yeah. So it just feels, I mean, to answer your question, it feels so much easier. I started to see weeks and months without it, and I didn't even really feel like I was trying. When I would go weeks and months, it was like fully white knuckling, trying to go through it. And, that's kind of what I say now is like, there's an easy way out, and it's not the traditional way, but it's a lot easier. That's for sure.
Right.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was,
That's why you're on the
it's-
podcast, is to say
I
something.
know, I know if you're going to say something. So it's like, when I heard Paul, I want to say something. But thinking about Hunter's recovery too is, I think, something that's common with a lot of recovery thought process is the idea of like discipline and willpower, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing and is needed in some cases.
Right.
But I think that that has become a big part of it is like, just be disciplined and just don't look and just have the willpower and you can do this, blah blah blah. And for some time, like for a lot of men, that's not helpful, or that's only helpful for so long.
Right.
And it's cool to see that as Hunter's gone through this different approach, a lot of it has been a little bit less of just like discipline and willpower and more about developing self-love and self-acceptance towards himself, which is
100%.
which I feel like is such a weird thing for men, because men are meant to be strong and emotionless and
Right.
this and that and like hard, where I'm like, actually men need more self-love. And I feel like that's where Hunter has really been able to recover, is like loving his past self, loving his present self, loving the parts of him that he didn't think were lovable, and like letting himself be emotional and break down sometimes, and then accepting those parts of him, because it's easy for men to look back and be like, I'm so mad at myself, I'm so mad at that past self that looked at pornography so much, and I wish he was different. Where Hunter's journey has been a lot of like, hey, I love that. I forgive that past self and I love him and I accept him. And now I can move forward. And so, yeah, all to say, like, it's cool to see Hunter go through that. And I think that is a big part of recovery is developing more self-love, which I think needs to not be weird for men, because it's needed.
So, Sarah, you're touching on something that I think, well, it definitely resonates with me, but it resonates with a lot of people listening. I'm curious what you love the most about being in a relationship with Hunter since he started this journey, because I can hear some excitement in your voice. There's something there.
What I love about Hunter?
Well, what do you love most about being in a relationship? How has it changed in the past year and a half since he started taking this journey? He's a different person, I would imagine.
Yeah. Good question. I would say that Hunter has given me space to grow myself, and that's been really exciting for me. And I feel like he's just been more loving, and I feel like it's just been more fun. And I feel like I feel like we've just had more fun. It's been more exciting, more love, and it's still been hard. Not to say it's all been daisy roses and rainbows,
Right.
but like we still have hard moments. But this is where it's interesting that you asked that, because honestly, even through Hunter's addiction, we've still had a really great relationship, and we've never been like a couple who fights. We've never really been like super mad at each other. Like, obviously we have our moments, but as a whole, we've always had a great relationship, which also might seem weird to some people. And I think that also needs to be said, because some people think, oh, if your spouse struggles with pornography, that automatically means they have a bad relationship. And that's not true.
That's a
like
great point.
Yeah, like Hunter and I have always had a great relationship throughout our 4 years of marriage. And this has just been a small part that we've had to work through. And obviously, as he's overcome it, our relationship has just grown and expanded even more. And it has been fun. But that isn't to say that when he was working through it, And through those hard moments, we still had fun moments.
Right. Well, and that's what I love about what you just said. Like, even though there's an addiction, that there's still those things that have come up and it's hurt part of the relationship. It's hurt your heart, hurt his heart, like all those things. You've still found a way to be able to have fun with each other, to be with each other, to really fight for each other, instead of
Yeah.
being like, I hate you because of this addiction, or I hate this addiction, and so it's therefore making me see you in a totally different light. You know,
Totally.
and so you're like, I just love what you said with having fun, even though, you know, having an addiction to pornography is not fun, or sexual addiction is not fun, right? But you
Yeah.
can still have fun in the relationships.
Totally.
And I love that.
I think Sarah did a really good job of detaching from my pornography usage. You know, I think a lot of wives, for obvious reasons, when they hear that their husband struggles, it's immediate, I'm not good enough, I'm not sexy enough, right?
Right.
But, you know, as she heard my story and she educated herself, she came to the realization that, you know, it's not about her at all.
Which that took time. I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, you told me and I immediately realized it. It wasn't that at all. Like it definitely,
Sorry,
yeah, like, oh yes, this isn't about me. I'm perfect. No, it wasn't. I think that Hunter's addiction has, if anything, like brought up a lot of healing that I've needed to work through. And so, of course, throughout, I would say the first 2.5 years of marriage, it was really hard for me. And every time he would come and tell me, there were stories that would go in my head of, I'm not sexy enough. I'm not good enough. I must not have a good enough body for him. And I must need to change. And he wants better. And those stories did play in my head a lot of times, and it was really hard. And I had lots of breakdowns, but I think that if anything, like his porn addiction, as I have gone through healing and worked with coaches and gained different perspectives and listened to tons of podcasts and learned more about pornography addiction and why men struggle with it and what it actually means, it's allowed me to realize like, okay, this is why he struggles with it. And his struggle has actually illuminated things inside me that need healing. Like body image stuff. Like, okay, if this is the story going on inside my head, then there's got to be something inside me that feels like I'm not good enough. Because if I feel like I'm trying to search from him to tell me that my body is good enough, that means I probably don't believe that my body is good enough. And so coming to this realization that like, okay, I need to realize that my body is good enough and that I'm sexy enough and that I'm beautiful. Because if I do that, I don't need him to tell me if it is or not.
Right.
And so I think that over the years, I don't want to say I'm grateful for his porn addiction because obviously no one wants it. But I've let it show me things that I need to develop for myself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does.
Yep.
You know,
Totally.
there's a lot of courage in that stance that you just described taking. And you described moments where, oh yeah, it has been hard. How do you continue to push through as you recover when it feels like, oh, like this thing's coming back for me, where I feel like I'm not good enough or sexy enough or whatever the thing is that comes to you? How do you push through?
Yeah. I feel like, how do I push through? Journaling at first.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe pushing through isn't the right phrase. That sounds like I just need to try harder.
How do you work through it?
Yeah, how do you work through it?
Yeah. I feel like it's been a process. At first, I would go for walks. Honestly, I'd go for a lot of walks. I feel like walks were really meditative for me and therapeutic for me because it kind of allowed me just to like feel my feelings.
Yeah.
I think that's important for a woman is feel your feelings. All your feelings are valid. And I think some women get these feelings and they shove them down, which I think is not healthy because there's going to come a moment that those feelings are going to come out and they're going to have a big burst. And I've had that before. I've pushed my feelings down and I've had big explosions.
And that's okay.
And that's okay too, because in the end, that explosion probably needed to happen because you did stuff that down. And so those explosions are necessary. But if you can feel your feelings in the moment, and that's what's really helped me is going on the walks, feeling my feelings. Journaling was a big part for me too. At the moment, I didn't have anyone to really talk to, which is something that I wish I did have because I was afraid to talk to people about it because I didn't want them to perceive Hunter differently. And I also was
Right.
also for myself too. And I wanted to protect Hunter. I didn't want them to see him as like this porn addict because once my parents figured that out, I was afraid that they were just going to see him as a porn addict. I didn't want them to see him as that, you know? And so I didn't really have anyone to talk to, so I would just journal. And then it was hard because the only one I had to talk to was Hunter. Then Hunter was going through it, and so it was a really hard thing for a while. And I feel like actually once Hunter opened up about it, it really helped me to be able to talk to more people about it, which then was really healing for me, so that I could have space to express my emotions instead of expressing them fully to Hunter.
Yeah.
Sarah,
Uh,
that is
does that
so
answer your
real.
Yep.
No, yeah, it does. And that is so real. I love the
question?
courage in that because it's just not like, I think a lot of times when people like talk about their story in past tense and the things they've been through, there's a temptation to be like, oh yeah, like it was that easy. And these are the things I need to do. And you write them down, you turn it into a checklist. And really there's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a struggle in that it can bring you together. But I just love the courage in that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So Hunter, for you, what you started that real big part of the journey like a year and a half ago. So what are you doing now? Like, what do you do when temptations come up? What does that look like for you to work through that and figure some things out?
Yeah, there were a few more steps, to my progression that I think were really important. One being, first opening up, getting rid of shame. Second, healing past trauma that could be there. Third was, realizing that there's nothing wrong with me. For the longest time, I thought,
Yeah.
I was overly sexual. I thought I had a chemical imbalance in my brain. I thought I had an addictive personality, all these things. And, none of that was actually serving me. And deconstructing those beliefs really helped serve me. And it's like, yeah, I'm a male. I like women's bodies. Of course, I'm going to like pornography. Like, that is a normal thing for a
Right.
male to desire and want and, get satisfaction from. So that was a big moment for me. It's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, but this is actually normal to have these desires. And then another big shift was, really, I almost, and I'm kind of hesitant how to word this, but I almost had to take the morality out of it for just a second. I had to not view pornography as this, big, evil, powerful thing, and I had to view it more neutral. And by doing
Love that.
that, I when temptations come or came, they still do come, but mostly back when they were coming more frequently, the first thing I would tell myself is I can, like, this isn't a fight. This isn't a war against temptations. This is, if I want to, I can. But the reason I don't want, or the reason I'm not going to, is not because I can't, but because I'm choosing not to. Because pornography
Right.
in itself, I like to compare it to like fast food. It's like the dollar McDonald's menu. No, it'll fill you up. It'll give you some satisfaction, but when I can actually save my, I don't know how explicit you guys want to get on this podcast, but when I can save, my seed for my wife and, use it as an experience for us to grow and connect together, it's like, dude, that blows pornography out of the water. It's like, at this
100%.
point, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even want to view pornography when I could, because, if I view pornography, then I'm going to have a conversation with my wife. And then it's going to be a few days, before we can get intimate again. It's like, man, I really like want to
I'd rather
save
just
this.
get intimate and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I had to take the morality out of it just for a second to really be able to see pornography for what it was. And that was like a big catalyst to shoot me into progress. And, right where I'm at right now is, I don't claim to be perfect, and I am still a student. I'm still learning. But, I feel really good where I'm at. I feel the most confident that I ever have. And, temptations come, and you know, I can view it for what it is and say, hey, I can view this if I want to, but really, if I can take a step back and be like,
Right.
it's just
Pause for a
not,
moment,
yeah.
make a
And
choice.
and then also it's like, man, I really crave connection with intimacy. And when you are, not to get too explicit, but doing your thing with pornography, there's no connection with the person on the screen. It's
Right.
soulless, it's
Mm.
cheap. But it's like, if you can be in a relationship with someone and have intimacies with someone, it blows it out of the water. It's not even a fair game.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at right now is, I'm not perfect, but I feel like I can see pornography as neutral. Just I can if I want to, but a lot of times it's not worth my time, and it's
Yeah.
not worth it for me.
Awesome.
So Hunter, I understand you're kind of at the point where you have turned outward and are starting to coach other men in addiction recovery. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
So tell us
Yeah.
about that.
When I had that moment where I was telling you guys in my story where I was like, I would trade every penny for this to be gone, that's when it kind of planted the seed of like, I think guys would really value something. And, if I can come at it with this different perspective that I've learned, I think it could be a really powerful thing. So, we've just started this journey of starting this, and I've coached almost 30 guys now, and it's been a really, really powerful thing for us, and I love it.
Heck yeah.
It's been so fun.
Sweet. So and we're going to ask you the same question, Sarah. So if you have someone that comes to you right now and they're like, man, I am struggling. I just don't know what to do. What is one thing that you would say to them right now?
The first thing that I often talk to my guys is, what is the belief that you have about yourself that you look at porn? These guys have these beliefs of, I'm a bad person, I'm a pervert, I'm out of control,
All the
uh,
shame words, right?
Mhm.
I will eventually cheat on my spouse. Um, the first thing is like, let's really take a step back from what you're telling yourself and what you believe about yourself because you look at pornography. My program isn't designed to be this quick fix. Hey, let's get you 30 days clean,
Right.
white people resist. It's like, hey, we're going to do the deep work, and you're not going to be perfect through the program, and that's okay. But like, if we can start shifting your beliefs in your relationship with pornography, that's where I think long-term results. So a lot of it is just like, so funny. I had a guy the other day, and we had one call, and he's just like feeling so ashamed about his pornography usage. And I'm just like, dude, I don't think you're weird or bad at all for looking at pornography. And he texts me after the call, and he's like, you're the first person in 19 years that has not made me feel like an absolute piece of the S word
Wow.
about my pornography.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was the first thing that he needed. It wasn't, hey, let's avoid pornography. Let's tips and tricks to stop looking at pornography. It was, let's dive into the beliefs first.
Right.
Wow.
Awesome. And for you, Sarah, if there's a woman that comes to you that reaches out to you and is like, "Hey, my husband just told me about all those things that he's struggling with and he's looking at porn," what words would you say to her?
I would say his pornography issue has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the things that he is working to overcome. And so I yeah, that's the first thing I would say has nothing to do with you, and you are
Yeah.
worthy, you are great, you are beautiful just the way that you are. And start recognizing those stories that are coming up for you. Like if your husband tells you, "Hey, I looked at pornography," what stories come to you? Because and it's kind of the same answer as Hunter. Like what stories are coming to you and what beliefs are coming up for you? And as you can start recognizing those and seeing them from a second perspective, like, okay, interesting. I can see that my brain is telling me that I'm not sexy. I can see that my brain is telling me that I'm not beautiful and that I need to probably change my body. Those things don't have to be true. and maybe view them and say, do I feel like I need to do that? Do I feel beautiful about myself? Do I need that validation from my husband? And how can I start, changing these stories so that even if he tells me or that he messes up, like I'm okay in with who I am. So
Right.
yeah, number one thing is his pornography issue has nothing to do with you.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So, guys, we like to end these podcasts by asking if you've got a song that encapsulates your recovery, maybe that's been influential for you. Do you guys have a song?
I'd have to look at it. I'm a big piano guy, like classical
Like the
music.
piano guys, or you're saying you like
No, not the piano guys. I mean, they're great, but a little bit different. You know,
I'll
Maybe
say one for
even
the
a
girls.
go-to
go ahead,
song.
go ahead.
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
say one for the girls. If you're a woman listening to this, go look up the song Darling by Beautiful Chorus.
Ooh, Beautiful Chorus is so good.
It's a good song.
Darling by Beautiful Chorus.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song that I love. I love the song White Flowers Take Their Bath.
Okay. Right on. That's an epic song.
I
name.
never heard
I
that
don't know
song
what
ever
that
in my life,
means.
but I'm
Hey,
totally gonna
but
go
it's
listen to it right
awesome.
now.
Go check it out tonight, and you'll be texting me, thanking me.
I'm sure. I'll
White Flowers Take a Bath.
Take their bath.
Oh, take their bath.
Is that the Screamo song?
No,
Oh,
it's not a
okay.
Screamo song.
Oh, there's a Screamo song he's been listening to the last couple of days. I was like,
No.
hopefully it's
And
not
who
that
sings
song.
that?
That's Rage Against. What is that?
Rage Against the Machine?
Rage Against the Machine.
For real? I freaking love Rage. Are you kidding me? And I've never heard that song. Maybe I just didn't know that's the name of the song.
No. White Flowers Take Their Bath is not
Rage.
Oh, that's what I was asking. I was like, are you kidding me?
No, very opposite.
Got it.
Hunter and Sarah, so fun to talk to you guys. If you are listening and you want to donate and help us move this cause forward, go to unashamedunafraid.com. You can follow us at Unashamed Unafraid on social media. Don't forget to rate us, give us 5 stars. And if you have a story or a resource, let us know. We want more people sharing their stories so that we can all feel a little bit less alone. And until next time, always remember to be unashamed.